Why is belly fat the hardest thing to burn? It's like no matter what, there always seems to be this build-up of chub around your waistline that just won't budge. Well, rest easy, because in this video, I'm going to reveal the 3 little known mistakes holding you back and how to fix them. All with real world examples from some of the guys. Guys who each had a light bulb moment, because these light bulb moments finally let them break through the invisible barrier between them and getting rid of that like little paunch. So separate yourself from the herd this summer and simply copy these examples to reliably shed the pounds and shed any feelings of self-consciousness or embarrassment about shedding the layers when the temperature soars this summer. Now, before we get into the juice of the piece, let's address the elephant in the room. I am not the size of an elephant. So if you're the sort of guy who fancies stripping down to your budgies and oiling yourself up in an attempt to be the next Mr. Universe, I'm not your guy. And maybe these bodybuilder types actually do need to obsess over every silly detail and complicated little dietary tweak. But for my friend here, cutting back on complexity is exactly what helped him finally burn the belly fat he'd been struggling with for years. See, as he got deeper and deeper into his 30s, the number on the scales continued to climb. In fact, ever since uni, there had been a slow and steady increase until he came to avoid going near the scales at all because of the, not fear, that's a bit dramatic, more like the nagging worry in the back of his mind he felt about seeing a new and even higher number. Another pound here, a bigger shirt size there, another notch looser on his belt. He felt powerless and he began to feel a craving jealousy of guys who never seemed to gain weight, until the first time reality kind of struck him that he'd let himself go a bit further than he was comfortable with. He felt a sudden strong surge of courage and determination as he decided to tackle his weight problem head on. Now, tell me if this sounds familiar. Obviously, there's a lot of conflicting advice out there on fat loss. So to get an idea of what normal guys had found worked for them, he hopped onto Reddit and so resolved to cut down on beers and cut out bread completely. Pimples! Now, this worked great for a week, worked great for 2 weeks, but then it was a busy day at the office, so he found himself grabbing a meal deal from Tesco for his lunch, which meant bread was back in. The rest of the week stayed busy too, so on the Friday afternoon, he found himself having a quick drink to relax, which meant alcohol was back in. And with this, the all or nothing spell was broken. And basically, broken accidentally. I mean, grabbing a sandwich because you're hungry and busy and it's lunchtime is hardly like a well thought out, I'm going to give up on this diet. But the problem my friend now faced was feeling like he'd failed on the simple diet. So, of course, the next time he caught his reflection in the mirror at a bad angle and decided it was time for a change, where the simple diet hadn't worked, he felt he needed something more advanced. So he had a dabble at keto because it's supposed to specifically burn fat. This time it was a friend's birthday dinner at an Italian restaurant that killed the diet, again leaving him feel like a failure. In fact, he started to feel a bit guilty and embarrassed because it seemed like he just couldn't control himself. Each failure left my friend feeling like he needed something even more drastic next time. More rules, more restriction, more complexity. After these 2 examples, and more than a few other attempts and failures, he finally discovered in himself a willingness to give up on the fat loss pathway he'd tried to follow before, because so far this pathway hadn't exactly led him to where he wanted to go. And he accepted that he'd made some mistakes and in some ways had created this problem for himself, which is a good thing because it means that he himself had the power to fix the mistake that he himself had created. He contacted me and we tried a unique and simple approach instead. Now, this didn't produce huge changes overnight. We've all seen the outlandish promises of lose 2 stone in 2 weeks, as if that was even possible. We looked at the activities and the foods he found easiest and most natural and built his own unique system around them. Because of this, he was able to stick with the attempt and went on to succeed in burning over 5 stone. He is now in total control of his body weight and how his clothes fit. And even more importantly, how he feels about himself and his body. So that is why simple is better than complicated. This next mistake might appear to have me talking out of both sides of my face, but let me tell you a little bit of Josh's story. Having been a big, strong rugby playing man, he's no stranger to hard work and discipline and dedication. But as he's gotten older and further in his career, he's been given more responsibilities at work, which has cut down on his time outside of work, as well as his energy levels. Meaning he found the clothes he used to look good in were feeling tight in all the wrong places. Now, somewhat opposite to my first example, Josh had a better understanding of his situation where he was and the changes in his capacities and abilities compared to what they used to be when he was younger. So he didn't keep looking for increasingly complicated schemes to bamboozle himself with. And in fact, he even hired himself a personal trainer at his local gym. So with promises of easy fat loss, he did a great job and managed to shed a few kilos basically without effort. But that is where the problem lay, really, because of the promises of ease of fat loss, Josh had an almost subconscious block in his mind against doing things that were difficult. So every time he felt hungry or grouchy or tired or low energy, a little voice in his head told him he must be doing something wrong, because he'd heard over and over again how easy it is to burn belly fat. And so since it was supposed to be easy, he would find himself doing something to make it feel easy. Maybe a little snack when his stomach grumbled, maybe skipping the gym that day because he was feeling tired. Every one of these choices alone is minor and insignificant, but all put together, and with this belief in ease underpinning everything, these choices worked in concert to block his body from burning his stubborn belly fat. Now, he was growing increasingly frustrated that despite feeling he was doing everything right, his body just wasn't changing. He knew he'd needed some help, and he'd gotten help, so why wasn't the help helping? Fortunately, he was smart enough and willing enough to understand the right time to change tactics. Josh replied to one of my emails and we linked up. A couple of minor adjustments to his plan were all we needed. And finally, he'd very successfully burnt more belly fat than he'd originally believed possible. So that's why easy isn't always the best thing to focus on. The fact you're watching this video with me suggests that this isn't the first ever time you've watched a video about trying to get back in shape. How right am I? But since you're still sat there watching, I'm guessing there's something missing from what the more well-known fitness people talk about, which is keeping you stuck. Otherwise, you'd already have a flat stomach and could spend your precious free time watching something more important, like this video on how hand grenades work. Anyway, that's where Tom found himself. A successful guy in his own career, he didn't get that success by copying the losers. When he wanted a promotion at work, he wouldn't ask the new guys for advice, he'd speak to his boss. When he wanted to know where to invest his money, he wouldn't canvass the local buskers. And just like the cliches about the skinny chef or the bald barber, there's a lot of truth and astuteness in copying the behaviour of the people who are ahead of us if we want an outcome like them. But there is a problem. No matter how good my own barber's barnet is, this is where I'm at. And taking detailed financial advice from someone who thinks $1 million is a small sum might prove to be slightly less than applicable to our situations. So whilst Tom was copying guys like this in hopes of looking half as good as them, what he discovered is the activities that these guys think of as normal and no big deal, because they've gradually built up to that level over so long, felt really difficult and drove him mental with monotony and boredom. Especially because food is like one of the few remaining pleasures you can enjoy sort of constantly. It's not like we're still 20 and getting pissed every night and smoking cigarettes or whatever. So if you cut out one of the few like sensory pleasurable activities that you've got, life's going to feel pretty grey. So we agree that copying someone behind you, yeah, probably not a great move. And we also see that copying someone who's 15 steps ahead of you, again, might not be the most helpful. Might be kind of interesting and fun to know about, but for right now, it's probably not a great move or applicable. But when someone is a handful of steps ahead of you, they're probably a perfect person to copy. Tom first took one step in the right direction. As this first step became easy, we took another step, and so on, because when a step becomes easy, you can increase and expand your capacity again, and then you can take another step. And going step by step feels like you're playing on easy mode, whilst also going further than you ever did when you played on hard mode and tried to take these big, great, giant leaps. Now, you'll notice a common theme with the guys in the examples. They've all had multiple, less successful attempts prior to hitting the nail on the head. It would be an easy and lazy step for me to say the reason they all finally succeeded is because they linked up with me. So instead of being lazy, I've created a unique and simple piece of homework for you to take away from this video. I realise homework conjures up visions of school and isn't the most exciting thing you've heard today. But if spending 10 minutes on this little exercise unlocks for you the ability to almost effortlessly melt away your stubborn belly fat, that seems to me like a pretty sweet deal, doesn't it? Anyway, you can claim your very own free copy today by hitting the link below and filling in your email address. Then I'll send your copy straight over and you can keep it forever to complete at a time which best suits you. So thanks a lot for watching. Feel free to do all the YouTube jobs such as like, comment, subscribe. I've been Ian Dowie, not the old palace manager, and I'll speak to you soon.